Great pleasure tonight. An honor indeed to introduce Joseph Tuck, the CEO and General Coordinator of Alvarado Street Bakery. It's part of our series of discussions, presentations about alternative economic ideas for Petaluma and indeed Sonoma County. Alvarado Street Bakery is a wonderful example of a worker-owned cooperative. It's been, I think it was founded in 1977, and one of the statistics, fantastic statistics I learned today from Wikipedia was that they ship out 40,000 loaves of bread a day, which is quite some amazing thing. I think Joseph's going to share a couple of other amazing statistics about Alvarado Street. It really is quite a model that I hope will inspire people to create other cooperatives in Sonoma County. This is being filmed for broadcast on PCA, I believe, channel 26 or 27. And with that, I want to introduce Joseph Tuck. Big warm welcome for him, please.
I usually don't use these. Up to you? All right. I usually don't use a microphone. Can you hear me without one? No. Oh, you're kidding me. You can't hear me. All right, I'll use one. It's something else. All right, this is a first for me. I never use these, but now I'll talk like this. Hi, I'm Joseph Tuck. Anyways, thank you for having us here. I just thought I'd start as to it's a strange day for me to be doing this because this is kind of you hearing me unplugged, because we just had our quarterly membership meeting, which is what a worker co-op will do when planning its own future. So I always put on a suit and tie for presenting to our membership our business plan, and I just thought how cool it would be to do it unplugged here, kind of thing. So thank you for having us. And, I guess I could start about what we talked about at our membership meeting. Usually I go from the beginning to the end, kind of like when we started, when we were 2 years old and et cetera, et cetera. But I just thought, here's kind of like the agenda topics that 120 worker-owned co-op talk about when they get together. And they talk about roll call. Then they review agendas, they approve minutes. Then the board of directors does a quarterly report on governance issues. Because in a worker co-op, at least in ours, you have kind of the managerial or the operational stuff, which is kind of what I concern myself about. And then you have the governance issues. They go on, whether it be outreach to other co-ops, looking for now, one of the things that we're interested in being a co-op is succession planning. Because some of us get older in a worker co-op, trying to make sure that the organization sustains itself is very important to us. Then we do our financial report, because again, one of the key components of all co-ops is transparency. And so every quarter, the controller will get up and do a detailed financial report to their to our worker members concerning what's working and what may not be working. So that goes on. Then we had an ad hoc committee where we really try to get people to run for the board of directors, because our board of directors is made up of our worker members. So we hire a committee to cheerlead people into that, partaking into governance. Then we have a great dinner break, which is really why we're there. And then we do, I'm just giving you this is what really goes to the nuts and bolts. Then we do a business plan, which is a total presentation that talks about all the kind of stuff that, businesses do. The key component is, this is all the workers that are sitting there hearing about what the plan is for revenues, where the revenues are going to come from, capital plans, where the capitals come from, is it going to be financed? And these are all, a reflection of our community here. That's the people, they're the stakeholders which are in a worker co-op. And then we talk about today, and then we do drawings, and people get money, door prizes for coming. So anyways, that's what we did today. many years later. Now, we've been in Petaluma for 5 years. We're a Sonoma County bakery. Our roots started actually in Santa Rosa in 1977, part of the Food for People nonprofit movement that was around the Bay Area at the time. This is before my time a bit. And we were part of a larger organization, which was called Red Clover's Workers Brigade at the time, which is, if people shop in Santa Rosa, you know Santa Rosa Community Foods or Market. Well, that was, the way the bakery actually happened was some store workers went, why don't we bake bread for the store? Is really kind of how it started, you know, and yeah, that would be cool. Let's bake some bread for the store. And at the time, there was another part of the organization called Country People's Warehouse, which was a food distribution network that serves food buying clubs all over Sonoma County, because that's really the genesis of the Food for People nonprofit movement was food buying co-ops, or you know, people at that time. So there was enough room to put an oven in there, and so we started baking bread. And we baked, you know, bread for the market, and then we expanded out to organic groceries. That was huge. You know, so we serviced 2 stores. And well, and that's the way it kind of starts, you know, with this. And so we did formulate it years ago with a political kind of an agenda at the time. We definitely had a political agenda. Now, again, this is before my time. I arrived at Alvarado in 1981 and got a job cleaning machinery. You know, just somebody I knew said, hey, you want to clean some machines? Okay. And, but again, the actual kind of the backdrop of what happened is we were part of a larger collective, and there was internecine warfare that happens in political organizations that there are different agendas, and if there's not enough capital to go around. So 5 of the members of Red Clover's Workers Brigade put together $9,000 and bought Alvarado from Red Clover's Workers Brigade and incorporated it in 1980 as a worker co-op under California state law, or California corporate code, I should say. And so that's kind of like our genesis, and we, at the time, you know, we did start with a political agenda. But even in the worker co-op world, and I don't know how much you all know about worker co-ops, and sometimes I'm just leaping to, you know, different, when I'm talking about the history. But, you know, worker co-ops tend to have certain principles, and principles such as democratic management, workers control the means of production, that patronage, which is a sense of all co-ops. I'm talking about worker co-ops. Patronage is something that ag co-ops, retail co-ops all have, but in a worker co-op, that means that all the goods and the services that you do towards the corporation, towards the cooperative, you get back in kind. In most of them, 1 hour worked equals 1 portion of the profits at the end of the year is another part of what a worker co-op is all about, and then transparency, et cetera, et cetera. So we went about our merry way, bought ourselves out of the co-op. And for us, we really wanted to be, there are many different types of worker co-ops and many different missions or agendas you might have. We had one, you know, ours is, and they're different, and they're not necessarily better than one another, but we wanted to be big. We wanted to be a factory, and we wanted to outgrow our downly mobile, white, upper-class, bourgeois roots and really reflect working class communities in what we do. That's what we wanted to do. Now, that's not necessarily what other people wanted to do. And so, you know, again, and I'm trying to give you a framework when you talk about worker co-ops, because we're just one of many. You don't just go, oh, we'll do just what Alvarado does. That's not going to work, because it has a lot to do with your size, what your mission is, what your goal is, what discipline you're in, as to how you organize and manage yourself. And there's no right or wrong in that. It's just those principles of how, again, workers control the means of production or service, and how, you know, transparency happens, and how all profits go back to workers. Those are kind of things that you can't get away from if you're going to be a worker co-op. And so we decided, yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to be as big as we can be, and we want to be a factory. Which again, in hippie worlds, that, you know, they're Luddites that said, you know, oh man, you don't want to make bread by hand anymore. You guys are just giving up all your principles. And we basically said, we want to have hands when we're like 60. So we're going to get machinery. Well, they might sound like foolish arguments, but they're heavy-duty arguments in terms of how, when you're sitting there, you know, as you're growing, because again, we started with 5, and now we're 120. You know, and so you don't manage yourselves the same as 5 as you do as you're 120, or it won't work. Or I've not seen that work, I should say. Or it wouldn't have worked for us. And we kind of learned that kind of perspective of how do you change and grow and evolve to whatever your goals, or if you're successful or non-successful, how do you go about your business? Now, when you're a worker co-op and you're really communists in a capitalist environment, because the word ownership is kind of crazy, because you're a member of the organization. When I leave, though I've been there 31 years, they're going to pay me my $1,000 membership back. Whatever patronage I have in the books, which is being paid off with every other worker, and I'm done. That's it. Well, that's not how, you know, to a lot of people, they go, ooh, what? No. You mean, but we have, I think, proven that if you have an entity and people get that in a system of true non-exploitation, and I'm not going to get too political, I'll go back to what we do, but if you're there and everybody owns it, the only people you can exploit is yourself, and you can do a really good job of it. You know, when you're all together, you really can. Well, which is kind of, and I'll give you some examples, whether it is, you know, at least twice in our history, we've had to vote ourselves pretty significant pay cuts. You know, and sit around and say, well, we have a decision to make here, that we go out of business, or we work for, like, at one time it went from $9 an hour to $4.35 an hour. And that's significant, you know, when you're there. But at that time, there were probably about 20 of us at the time, maybe a little less, maybe 15. But these are the kind of decisions that worker co-ops mean, and can make at times, because you look around and say, well, everybody else is going to suffer. You know, that kind of thing can go on. So that type of an environment where you really establish, you know, some sort of a culture that's based on really knowing that, you know, you're dependent upon your co-workers, but they're not really trying to get over on you, or management if you have managers, and that the owners are yourself. Because again, we always say we're worker-owned because it gets too crazy to say you're not. Then you say, well, what are you talking about? You know, even our worker members will say, no, I own the place. Well, not so much, but that's okay because they live in this kind of society. So back when we really started looking towards, you know, what we want it to be, one of the key issues for worker co-ops always is a lack of capitalization, a lack of access to capital. And it's very, very difficult because, you know, we're in the baking business, and I don't think this is going on school. We spend between $500,000 and $800,000 every year on capital just to replenish trucks, computers, pans, et cetera, et cetera. It's a capital-intensive industry. Well, when you're starting out and you don't have money and you don't have capital, there's only so much sweat equity you can do. And you're going to do sweat equity, only there's no equity in the end. It's sweat patronage, I guess is the better way of saying it. But that is one of the key challenges for every co-op. And we were very fortunate, and it was kind of the height of irony, is how do you access capital? Because when you first go in, they say, well, who are the co-signers? And you go, oh, co-signers. We don't have those. I mean, nobody's going to guarantee it. We can't really do that organizationally. And so that becomes a real issue for, traditional lenders. But for us, it was very interesting because this really, really is hard. Because businesses are hard anyways. And when people come and say, well, like, why is Alvarado so successful? It has a lot to do with our structure. It does. It has to do with, again, the inherent trust culture you have, the lack of supervision in relationship to the amount of employees because you don't need them. Though we do have supervisors in our place, we do all that stuff. We hire and fire because in our kind of methodology is, why would you want someone with you who wasn't participating to their best? And in a baker and in our discipline, and if they're not there when the bread comes out and it burns, you're going to allow them to do that time and time again? Is that going to work for us as a collective or as a cooperative? Not so much, again. So we do, have those kinds of stringent stuff that goes on. But, in terms of, again, getting that first initial push off, we have the competitive advantage of what I said is the co-op. You've got to have a goods and service that somebody wants. That's one thing I try to preach to people starting co-ops is, it's great to have the organization, but don't get so caught up on process and what you are being. Think about what your customer wants. Think about what you're doing. For us, our mission is really important, not just the co-op part, but the organic, sprouted, whole grain part of what we do is really, really important to us. If you're going to say as important, we go, probably not. But it's right up there, and I just want to kind of put that out because you're talking about co-ops, is you really got to have a good idea. And it's got to be something that in a free market economy, people want to buy. Because for us at least, we advertise now more than we were a co-op, but when we used to go in and ask people why they bought our bread, it wasn't even for health. It was because it tasted good. You know what I mean? It was kind of disappointing on some level, but we also knew that was kind of what we wanted to do mission-wise back in the days, create organic, whole grain, sprouted, formatted products that people beyond who we were would eat. We wanted to try to trick normal consumers into eating organics, is really what we wanted to do, at affordable prices. Because again, in our world, that's another part of our balance and what our mission is how do we keep our bread affordable to customers? And so, because we're cheaper than Orwee, and we're really proud of that. That you can buy organic, local, whole-grown, local bread at $3.99 in Safeway now. Now that we've had this big argument with them, it used to be $5.09. Who's gouging whom? That's why. Well, I'm not going to say really bad things about Safeway but I wouldn't shop there. But that's just me. I wouldn't. So, anyways, that's part of that whole thing. Kind of getting back to that lack of capital is again something to consider, because in our world, and it was again some of the ironic things that happened in a worker co-op. We had finally gotten to a point. We had gotten a little bit of loans from moms and dads to begin with. That did it. We got like about 10 grand that we bought some really terrible equipment with. That was just terrible. And then we got enough business that it was ironic because the co-op bank, which is a national institution, wouldn't look at us, but Bank America would. And it was during the apartheid times. And here we are going, okay. And it was, again, an internal dialogue about, and one of the reasons I'm putting these things out is it's, in my opinion, impossible to be perfect as a co-op. It's impossible to be everything to everybody and be that, whatever your perfection is. So you make compromises, and that's why, to me, a mission statement is so important, because do those compromise, if you're looking at compromise, is it somehow denigrating your mission statement? But I mean, and that to us is really important when you're looking at it, because there's going to be compromise, or at least for us there was. We had to fight the Freon War because we realized we had a national or potential national audience. but to get our bread, because we're sold all over the country. You know, you can find us anywhere in the United States and in Japan. And for us, but it was a dialogue. Well, it's like, but you're going to use, you know, that is not the most efficient way of distribution. That is creating and this is back before footprints were even talked about as being footprints, because we didn't have that much knowledge. We didn't even know we were green. We just did it. You know, what are you talking about? You know, we got some green business award about like 3 years ago. It's just like, really? You know, because that is who we are. That's who we've always been. And so to me, those kind of compromises, something that Alvarado had to work out, whether it be, again, that growth issue where you lose collectivity or consensual decision-making the larger you get, because it becomes more impractical. You know, if there are 3 of you and you're a co-op or a collective, you can sit around and talk about everything all day long and get it done. But if you're 120 of it, you can't really process whether or not the locks need to be changed. They need to be changed. But it's a choice to grow to that, you know, I'm not saying right or wrong, but it's a choice that one will make, kind of going from small to large, because again, we really wanted to prove that generally an industrial model could create better. Our mantra was always, we're going to make better than union wages. And we're making better than hostesses now. Well, but that's actually a sad story to me, because it really shows how entities that create a dynamic of us versus them, management versus union, everybody's not a stakeholder, everybody's out to get whatever they can get because the other person's going to F them over, with absolutely no vision on the marketplace, can end up having 18,000 people lose jobs. You know, that's really what happens. I'm not really sad that retro Twinkies are gone, but I am sad that 18,000 people lost their gigs, type of deal. And so, you know, again, for us, our goal was to do that, so we embraced technology. And, you know, again, the sprouted thing for us was huge. You know, that's a part of in the history. You can do everything great. I mean, I see some of the audience that was affiliated with Amy's Kitchen. And a little known fact was, way back in the day when we were in Roanoke Park, because we started in Santa Rosa and then we moved to Roanoke Park twice and then we moved to Petaluma. We're going to be here forever though, because we've got a huge facility. I just said that in the membership meeting. I just sat there and said, we're here forever. You know, I did, because we've got a great place and a lot of room to expand. But, you know, just that serendipitous thing is that we started making this pizza crust for Old Chicago Pizza way back, and the people who do it are the Berliners, who Amy's Kitchen actually started in Alvarado's, was baked off beginning co-packed at Alvarado. The only reason I'm telling you that story was because the Berliners sold nationally, and we went, oh, maybe we could freeze stuff. Or, you know, and if we hadn't had that conversation, would we have ever really thought that through? So I'm just saying, within any type of success story you have serendipity that takes a place. But again, you having a vision. Our sprouted bread, on the other hand, we knew, which is what we do, which we started doing in 1984, and we turned a corner. And we knew that because we looked at Ezekiel bread and knew it sucked. And knew if we could make that bread better than they could, that from a nutritional perspective, we would find an audience. And we are still not Hertz. Ezekiel still is synonymous with a lot of people for sprouted bread, which we hate. You know, that's like, you know, it's like, you know, if somebody goes Kleenex or Xerox and you go copy machine, you know, you just want to, but it is synonymous with that. But we did find a niche, and that was entrepreneurial spirit, not serendipity. I'm just trying to give you kind of different components of what goes on. But the framework of the co-op is what allowed us to this day to be very entrepreneurial as we got larger, and very flexible as to what we do. Because you generally, you don't want to create more jobs, because then you want to create jobs that are meaningful. You know what I'm saying? You want to create jobs, but meaningful jobs. You know, not just jobs for jobs, but jobs that lend itself to the organization. So you end up in a situation where there are less barriers. That culture of transparency means there's more quick conversations about how you can do stuff quickly. And even though we're 120 people, that culture gives us a real economic advantage, which is kind of paid out. And kind of like where that end point of that story goes is currently, when I first worked there, I think if we did 600 units in a day of bread, I would die. That would be like 9 hours, 10 hours worth of work. And yeah, I was making, $4.35 an hour with no benefits. And now at Alvarado, the average worker, their average pay for last quarter was $38.75 an hour was their average pay per hour. That is exclusive of patronage, which is the concept of, the profit we talk about that comes back to workers based on hours. We redeem that. That's a capitalization protocol that you can use to try to capitalize your co-op. One of the things you're starting a co-op, you can have your membership fee be large, if you want to, trying to attract capital to begin with, or you can, not redeem patronage forever. I never thought I'd get patronage. I always thought it was something we did for that bank. Say, oh yeah, we're in too. Yeah, look at I got dividends. I'm not getting anything. But we redeemed that, and currently for worker members above that number, that works out to be about $20,000 a year, though 20% of that, there's income tax involved in that. So they kind of get, in terms of cash, about 14 grand a year above that. Then we, again, because a worker co-op, you remember, all we do is look at how do we, divvy up the benefits that we have, or the compensation. So we have a very robust medical program. And we never think about, well, everybody else is making for bigger co-pays, why shouldn't we? Well, we go, why? So we can make more money? You understand? So that does not happen in our world. And then a 401k in our world, usually in organizations, they will do matching. And that's really cool, good stuff, when your organization will match it, which means that people that have higher compensation can usually match, but lower compensated employees can't because they're trying to live. Well, we give you 14% of your money, whether you like it or not, of our profits. Get funded into every worker's 401k yearly. And we'll fund this year, the 4th of December, we'll put $1 million in for last year for our contribution towards worker retirement. And again, and I'm just telling you, kind of like, it can happen. We're kind of living the co-op dream on that level. But it has everything to do with those kind of steps of making sure, like in any sound business, that you've got great partnership with the people that you work with or working with, that you have something that you can sell, that people want, and then you're willing to work for nothing for a long time. Because you will. But it can be, we always looked at it as, the idea was right livelihood is what it was called. And again, to this day, I feel good about what I do because I made organic bread and I never really exploited anybody. And what else did I want with my time on the planet? So that's kind of a very general history that went on for about an hour, right? Was that about? Or a half an hour. 35 minutes was what I was trying to do. So I could take questions now on any level. Hi.
How does it work for new employees? Do you have an educational system? How does it
work? There's two things when you start
Just repeat the question.
Oh, okay. How does it work for new employees that come in? And I'll expand upon that to new prospective members, because there's two different things that are going on. The first thing we want to tell a worker is what time they come in. How to not hurt themselves. We do basic kind of orientations that you would do in any kind of entity where here they probably tell them, like, don't scald yourself. Here's how the machine works. So you do training. And it's really interesting in a worker co-op when it comes to vetting new workers. And again, we don't have turnover really too much anymore. We had like 2 this last year, and we will hold people accountable, and so if indeed we will do that. So we don't do as much orientation, but we have a full system of making sure they get all that they need to do their job adequately, and they understand what's expected of them and what they can get. And that's a full-blown kind of, process that's fairly rote. And during that period, we're vetting them. And I tell this story about 27,000 times. I'll tell it one more time. Where when I walk around, and there's 120 folks, so I still know everybody. And so I'll walk around to some new worker who's trying out, and I'll ask one of their coworkers, and all I have to say is, do I need to know their name? And they will absolutely say, not so much, or yes, depending upon whatever, because it's the coworkers who vet the worker, not the managers or the coordinators, because they're the people who care. But so we do that, and then because again, we wanted to model a working class, which we are. We've got a huge Hispanic presence in our organization, so we do English as a second language training. Every week we employ teachers so that we do that kind of training, and then we do co-op training. That's part of becoming a member, and so we do a financial trainings. And again, our conceit is you don't have to be. A lot of stuff is common sense, and so the educational backgrounds of our worker members are working class backgrounds, but you can put it in very simple. It's not rocket science in my opinion. So we do this whole how to read a financial statement, how to do that kind of stuff, and then we do an overview on worker co-ops in general, and then they have to pass a test. But it was funny because the test is not exclusive. We make it open book. Because it made no sense to us to exclude workers. Yes.
I have a couple of questions. Unlike the Mondragon cooperatives in Spain, the cooperatives here, Rainbow, Field, and Kaya, are not under an umbrella organization, but you at least network with each other to have some sense of unity with the handful of cooperatives in the Bay Area. And the second question is, because of the gluten-free bakery the last couple of years, have you noticed a little dent in sales because wheat is a significant component in your product?
The first question was, and if I get it right, the Mondragon model has an umbrella organizations, and there seems to be just a very loose affiliation between worker co-ops in this area, or is there an affiliation? Is that what your question was?
No, I don't think there is like an umbrella organization as they do in Spain.
No, there's not.
So, given that, is there some unification that takes place by either networking with Rainbow
Yeah.
or Kaya?
Well, what happens, just so you know, and this is a website you could check out, is we're all members of the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops, which is a website you can check out that is the resource on the web in terms of finding out how to start a co-op, case history, et cetera, et cetera. And we have an outreach committee ourselves that affiliates. So we affiliate more nationally on that level than locally. The last 7 years has brought together more bonding here because we chose a path of having coordinators or bosses, and other co-ops like Rainbow chose not to. There was a time where we didn't speak very much to one another, but we're beyond that now, all of us. But there was some, feelings hurt at one time, like, a decade or so ago, about, our feelings got hurt going, well, you've just gone to the man, you're a bunch of corporate people, you have managers, and we went, whoa, okay. We'll go on our own for a while. But that time has passed because there are Equal Exchange is another worker co-op in the Boston area. And there are more, and Mondragon runs like us. They have the same sort of model that we employ. And we don't look at coordinators as necessarily the devil incarnate. We don't. We realize that it's having specificity within an organization that allows the global good to get better. As to your gluten-free thing, we don't see it as much as we thought we would. We look at, the carb craze was much more of an issue for us than gluten-free has been. Funny enough. No, it was. Oh yeah, carb craze was absolutely, we could see in our figures. We've played with gluten-free. I don't know if people know what sprouted wheat does because there's so much bad information about gluten-free out there. If you're celiac and you've been diagnosed there, stay away from wheat, stay away from barley, stay away from rye. But if you have trouble digesting wheat, or it gives you some problems, or you feel lethargic, or something like this, perhaps sprouted wheat is what you should be trying, because when you germinate grain, you actually break down the phytic acid, which is on the outside of the hull, and you start pre-digesting the starches into more complex carbohydrates, and your body can assimilate it. So, and we've also even looked at doing a gluten-free recipe, but we couldn't reach our mission on it. We couldn't make something that was nutritious and taste good. We failed. Or so far. Oh, I'm good. No,
Are you sure?
Oh, I'm
I
positive.
want you to stay for a while.
All right, no, I'm good. I'm good.
That's fine.
She was first. I'm not.
Yeah, just while you're on the product-based questions, I'm just curious if you have any heirloom grains that you're working with.
Well, if you're talking the wheat belly thing, is that where we're going with it? I'm not sorry. We don't use our scope of how much organic wheat we have to source now. We're one of the largest, users of organic grains in the United States of wheat. So our sourcing comes from a bit from California, but mostly from the Plains states. And sourcing, there's been this whole conversation about dwarf wheat, if that's what you were referring to, as opposed to
I'm
einkorn.
just wondering if there's such a thing as heirloom grains that you guys can get at Huntington.
Well, there's such a thing as we make a spelt bagel, which some people might say is an ancient grain, and to use heirloom as a thing. And there's a farmer purveyor of kamut, if you know what kamut is as a grain, who's playing around with trying to put enough einkorn, which is an ancient strain of wheat, to see whether or not that has demand. But currently we use general organic, red, hard, and spring wheat. Yes?
You've alluded a couple times to your organizational structure. Could you
Right.
give a little more detail about what you mean about that?
Okay. It's a circle. If you look at it, if you start anywhere on the circle, is you have your membership. And your membership is 120 worker members. And they elect a 9-person worker member board who serve 3-year terms, kind of consecutively, so there's only 3 that come up every year. And then they also elect other governance committees like communication. We have a grievance committee. One of the things when you talk about discipline in an organization in a worker co-op, you would want to say that the last say would be done by workers. So in our system, this is just going off that topic a little bit, but it's organizational, is if someone feels they're being treated unfairly, or the policies and practices, or they've been dismissed unfairly, et cetera, they go through a 3-step process where they first bring it to their own coordinator, try to resolve it. If that doesn't happen, they bring it to my position. I have the right or the responsibility to overturn it. And if they don't get redress there, they can bring it to a worker panel who can make a recommendation to the board of directors, because we made a serious mistake years ago where we had a sexual harassment case that was really dead to rights. This person harassed this other person. And they had friends on the grievance committee, and they overturned the decision and put us at financial risk and peril, and created a culture that was very difficult to deal with for a couple of years. So we learned our lesson to say, no, the board needed to be the last say, but they will go by what they will listen to what the worker panel does. So you have the 9-person board. The 9-person board then hires my position. And I'm known as a general coordinator internally. It just didn't make sense to people saying that externally, so what does that mean? So the CEO became something that helped us it gave me more standing to people who, when I have my earrings off. I guess that would be a way to put it. And so they hire my position. Then I'm responsible, and I hire and coordinate the departments and and 2 ancillary positions, because we have a personnel specialist, which is kind of unique to a worker co-op, which is not really an HR person. He's like an ombudsman person. He's like Switzerland. In other words, so he sits around and like he had to go into 2 conflict resolutions, like yesterday and today, by somebody who didn't like one sentence on their evaluation. And so he had, that's kind of what he does, and he reports to me. He does benefits, and we have a plant environmentalist that does food safety. Then we have 3 distributions, because we have a depot in Mountain View and a depot in Sacramento. So because we service fresh all the way to Santa Cruz, all the way north to Healdsburg, and all the way east to Grass Valley. And then we have operations, maintenance, finance. They all report to me. Then they hire workers, right? I don't hire workers. They hire workers who then are elected by their coworkers to become members, which completes the circle of organization. That do it?
Once I see a flow chart.
All right. Yes.
I have 2 questions. One was your multiples of salaries between workers and coordinators. And the other question would be, thinking of energy usage and the environment, how large would you have to get before you thought it was worthwhile splitting and letting your duplicate service your second largest geographical area, like if you're shipping largely to the East Coast or
Okay. Well, on the one from my kind of, because I'm the highest paid compensated employee, it's about 3.75 to 1 is what that ratio is currently. It fluctuates between that and 3.5 depending upon our gain sharing program, which is this program that we put into place, which we've had for quite a while yet, where it's again how you create stakeholders when it's your money, where we all make a wage, and then we set these targets in terms of operational income and compensation to dollars, and say if we can make right now 8% income from operations, that's all we need. The rest of it, let's give it to ourselves once a quarter. Everybody just gets 1 share. Doesn't matter who you are, whatever it is, 1 share. Last year, each one of us got $31,000 worth of that. So what that does for my wage is it levels my wage to other workers more readily. So the higher the gain sharing, the lower that number is. So the number fluctuates between 3, 7, 5. It's never been over 4 in terms of that. The second question is, well, we have a 435 kilowatt hour solar panel system on our bakery, which we put into play 2 years ago, I believe. Which was one of our ways, which was really interesting to worker co-op, because I had to go in front of the membership and say, here's a solar panel project. It's going to cost $1.8 million, but you get 30% back from the federal government. What do you think? And most worker members went, well, how much money is that of my pockets then? And we did analysis on it, and we actually asked the straw ballot before analysis, like, well, how much are you willing? How much are you willing as a person to feel good about the environment? And for our worker members, it was about $1,500 a year, which isn't bad.
I was referring to, that's great. I was referring to transportation. If you were shipping a huge amount of bread to Chicago, or the East Coast, would you open up a
No, well, here we went through that construct when we built in Petaluma, because we were there, and we were in Roanoke Park, and we were in 1 building, and then we were in 2 buildings, then we were in 3 buildings. We kept on. Martin Drive, we thought should have been called Alvarado Avenue. We were really thinking it should have been. And we went through that whole idea. We talked about the plus and minuses of starting a bakery on the East Coast. And our worker members decided we wanted to create jobs in Sonoma County. And there was some people, which I was just telling someone in the back, that there was also a lot of people going, do I have to move there and train people? I have to move from... So there was some self-interest from some workers of wanting to go train it. And when we looked at the complexity and what we thought we could do, we made, again, that compromise, saying that for us organization, we also had very large concerns that our culture would change, that we would not be able to, we have depots, and keeping those cultures within our system is a real challenge to do. And having something on the East Coast, how would we manage that cultural deal? So we backed away.
Do you sell bread directly from your facility, or do you have tours, or people have?
Yes and no. To the bread on the facility, what we do is we, just so if you go, you phone first, because all we do is we in Rona Park we had a retail store. It failed because you don't really put a retail natural food store in the middle of an industrial park. Then we put a cafe in. That didn't make it either. So when we moved here, what we do is we take the breads that are like seconds, that are like they're small and they got a seam in them, and we put them out. But we are so good now, is if you're going to do that, phone us and tell us, say and have them put that away, or you'll come there and go, what, no salt and essentials again? Is that all? Because we always have no salt and essentials. 2 great breads. Yes.
Got a question regarding the idea of profits.
Uh-huh.
Because in the typical model that we hear about, like with capitalism, the profits, you have to make enough profit that goes back into shareholders and all that business. How does it differ in the co-op model, the whole idea of profitability, and then where does the profits go? Is it recapitalization and all that?
Well, yeah, well, what happens in terms of profits, and one of the differences is, because you are a worker co-op, there are internal revenue codes that have to do with subchapter T, which means that when profits are generated up, and we issue what they call qualified patronage dividends. And this is what, you get your profits for the year, and that's just your income minus your expense is your money, right? Now, where does that money go? Well, in a worker co-op, and we call what they have patronage sourced hours and non-patronage sourced hours. That's workers that are members versus workers that aren't members, right? And because in our organization, we do have 2 out of the 120 that aren't members. One decided never to become a member. Go figure. But we love him for it because I can use him for jokes all the time. It's just great. But that patronage sourced income is not subject to federal income tax. That is taxable to the person to whom that's generated. So in any given year, for example, I worked 100 hours at Alvarado, and everybody worked 1,000 hours, total. So I get 10% of the profit if you get, because it's 1 hour per share, and we made $1,000. I would get a check for 20% of that in the cash portion during that year to cover my tax liability on some level. This is getting a little bit too arcane, I can tell. But the other part we keep and then redeem at a later time. That is capitalization to a company because you hold that cash within your organization to be able to finance. So, and then we pay corporate taxes on that, in our world, on that 6% of non-patronage source hours. So, it's interesting from that tax perspective, because you're still paying it. I mean, you now pay it as a worker as opposed to you as an entity paying it together. You still pay it. It's a way that as an organization, if you see it as being one, you pay less. If you get, that's why they have subchapter T. We just take advantage of it.
How many of those 118 members work full-time, Joe?
All of them.
They're all 40-hour week roughly, or?
Well, yeah, roughly. There are some people that are, some routes run the workers work 4 days in some of the Sacramento areas. They love the 4 days, go figure. But we have no part-time employees. I mean, that's it. And then, but another thing that happens in a bakery is, it's demand-driven. And so, it's not perfect. In other words, if our demand goes down, there are less shifts to be made. And even though you're a 40-hour worker, you might on a given week, if we don't have enough work, somebody might get 4 hours, or we might, have to adjust that way. There's some variability to the production aspect. The distribution side is straight up, you're out, like any other kind of fixed cost. Yes?
What do you think about the application of the cooperative model to predominantly service-based industries, and especially ones where there can be vast differences in skill level between different communities?
I heard the first part about what do I think about the.
Service-based industries.
Right. Well, there are some great models out there. Again, if you check out, I believe in Chicago, whatever. I think there's a great opportunity for service industries like house cleaning, a classic exploited industry, to ban, and this is being done in different parts of the United States, to organize as a worker co-op and get some economies of scale when you're an independent contractor on some level. If you think about how the service industry like that works, where there's a bunch of people doing stuff and they're independent operators and they have to do taxes, banded together to create some sort of entity and some sort of goodwill towards that. So I see, that there's certainly opportunity in service industries.
I'm curious, were there external obstacles, like were there any political or economic or community that were not happy with what you were putting together in your model?
I don't think they even knew we existed. Yeah, I know. We were just some people. We were not in. I talk about, like, just in terms of entities, is like, we have our logo is cat, Greta, and the reason we had the cat was because we thought that's the way you did food pest control when we were young. And Santa Rosa wasn't really happy with that part of what we were doing. Really? You have a cat? So, that was, so we've integrated with them, but we've never had, because another thing is, it's really interesting to me that co-ops are not families, which sounds, that some people don't really like how that sounds, because people emulate that, well, if the business worked like a family, it would be better. And I say, no, we work like this weird amalgam of corporation transparency where we're all there and it's not your crazy aunt who's your boss because it's your aunt. It's your boss or whatever because they do their job well. And that is created for us when we interface with entities. We've always been way above the curve when it came to quality control, food sanitation, that kind of stuff. We've always been above. Once we got, oh, yeah, cleaning machines is something you should do. Yeah. Yes. I'm not at liberty to say that at all. I have contracts to say that sprouted wheat, California style. But it's interesting when you look at private label projects for us because, again, who we are, if you're into brand equity, that can be a very scary thing to do, to create private label things that compete against your brand on some level. But that's not in our mission. Our mission, it doesn't say anything about Greta the cat. So for us, entities that could, but it says something about affordable food. And Trader Joe's has this sprouted wheat bread for like $2.99. And I just say, go figure. There are economies of scale. So from our perspective, entities that can get organic whole grain foods out into the environment at a reasonable price, and whoever makes them, who I'm not allowed to say, makes a good margin on it. We have, again, in a worker co-op, that's a construct. Because imagine you're an RSR, route sales representative, because we have 25 routes in this area, and because wages are usually a huge issue in a co-op. Oh, and the worker members still hold the right to wages. So wage policy is voted on by the membership, which is, that can be really challenging. Because now you have self-interest groups, et cetera, et cetera. So we fought and got commission systems in for route sales representatives because we wanted to incentivize people to not want to go to Lake County to drive because it's the coolest route. We wanted them to go to the city where all the customers are. It just makes sense, common sense to the business to make sure that your best RSRs are where your customers are. But when Trader Joe's came in, and again, you're looking there and going, now my commission is being impacted by this bread that I don't serve. That can be an interesting conversation within a co-op, which you wouldn't have in any other organization. But for us, because that entity, because everything flows back to worker co-ops, if we make money off private label, the idea is, well, you're not getting it here, but you get it in your patronage, but you get it in your gain sharing, which is, again, a different, how our model helps resolve or address those kind of issues that would just be bubbling resentment in a union-based company, where they would do it and they just hate everybody that did it, kind of deal. Makes it different. Yes?
So what type of philanthropic, what is your philanthropic mission? Do you guys, how do you give back or how do you pay it forward?
What, other than our myopic viewpoint of trying to do what we do, we every day donate bread all over the county. We've been doing it for like 20 or 30 years. So all, you go to any kitchen or senior center here, we've donated every single day since the dawn of time. So that's been, it's funny for us because we try to keep in our, because the philanthropic thing is, we said, like, again, our mission statement, we supported like Prop 37 because that was important. I don't know, that's kind of political, but we go organic co-op. That's kind of like, because if we get into other stuff, then it's like, well, how come you're giving to them and not, and we said, because in a worker co-op, everybody's going to be talking about that. So we more or less said, let's keep it simple. Let's just be philanthropic to our mission. And that's kind of what we've done in terms of that.
Are you intentionally keeping a low profile? Because I know a lot of people don't really realize that you're a co-op and you're here in Petaluma. I know people who are into co-ops know it, but is that intentional or is that just?
No, it's not intentional. We don't, it's funny because in a bakery tends to be like your place. It's an everyday, it's an adventure place. Well, because every day in a bakery is to reach out. So tomorrow at the board, because there's a board meeting tomorrow, I'll go, I doubled up. I got this month covered.
We appreciate it.
Right.
Just a quick question. What's your take on the potential momentum of co-ops, more in the landscape in the U.S.? Do you see a threshold coming up, or are we stagnant, or do you see momentum there? Do you have any idea on that?
I see more momentum than I've seen for a while because, again, that's one of the reasons I like telling the story is because it creates, I still have this dream or conceit that our type of model could be overlaid in places like Hostess if they could find a way of worker owners taking a bankrupt type of organization. There was a union-driven fight for this biscotti company in New York City, and I happened to, my brother's wife was the lawyer who fought for the workers who won, then they just closed the plant down, that kind of deal, which happens a lot. And I've just said that I think that model might have more resonance going forward, not just the model of starting it here, where on a worker co-op level, there's more community drumbeat. Again, if you see that, than I've seen for like the last 7 years or so. So I would say that it's getting more play than it ever has.
I was wondering, it seems to be very conducive for bakeries and food industries. What other areas, what other businesses do you think your model could be placed on?
Anything that makes widgets. I mean, bakers are widget makers, and again, service. There are other Equal Exchange again, and he is a coffee warehouse reseller that is very successful, and then service. Again, like Arizmendi, people think about as being a bakery, but then again, you have Alvarado Factory, Arizmendi, more like this. What we call a retail bakery, where like they have stuff in the back, but they're selling to people who come in to have a kind of atmosphere. You sell here an atmosphere to come to, which is really great. You know, and I'm just saying, so I can see those entities also having merit. You know, that I don't think it's wedded to a discipline. And in fact, you just happen to know because you live in the Bay Area of two of them. You know what I mean?
Well, it seems to be when you say the word cooperative in America, you do think of bakeries, other than in Monroe. It's very generalizing statement, but I think that is true. That's kind of an association that we have here.
A lot of food service, a lot of service sectors ones are starting all over the United States right now. So if you go check it out, they are.
There was in Michael Moore's movie, he did a piece on an industrial robotics company back east.
Sure. Isthmus Engineering. Yeah, they exist. It still, again, is trying to get more kind of, no one's going to say that, like, it's a huge movement. It's going to wave, but the more that people talk about it, because what I always find interesting at Alvarado is we hire, we used to just hire like ourselves, you know, like, you know, we used to ask, what was your sun sign? And if you didn't know your rising sign, you weren't in the right place. But that's not who we are now. Now we look at what your background, what you've done, what your discipline is, and we find the most easily co-opted workers are high-level managers who have been exploited at other industries. No, it's really interesting because people always think of workers, you know, line workers who are exploited as being, but that doesn't stop as you go up those levels of responsibility. And so for me, when you see this happening, you can see how this can have merit, you know, because again, we co-opt people. We just more or less poison their minds. We make them communists and they don't even know it.
Do you face any demographic issues? Specifically, do you have a baby boom bulge that's about ready to cash out? And if so, does that pose a problem for you?
Cash out's not the word because you can't really cash out in a co-op.
Take your patronage.
Well, but they don't. They get, our patronage goes on a revolving door. The way our patronage works is it's very controlled, and it's a FIFO system, first in, first out. So we're redeeming fiscal year 2009 this year. And everybody that worked there, no matter if you were there, you've got to be in the co-op 9 months to become a member. There are strictures beyond what I've went in terms of education. All that patronage, no matter my patronage dollars is the same as theirs, so there's no real incentive or for someone to leave to get any kind of cash out. That doesn't happen in a worker co-op. That being said, you know, we are looking at, we're getting older as an environment. You know, so right now, succession planning in all areas. So you look around, who's gonna retire? You know, that's one that, like, my gig is one that the board's focusing a ton of attention on, which they need to, you know, because again, you want to make sure you plan adequately for the organization, because the organization succeeds, and you know, I want it to be gone, you know, they're doing great stuff when I'm long gone. That's really the whole idea, and it's not really a personal thing; it's an entity. That's what I'm saying. It's fealty to an organization as to a personal thing, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Right there.
Let's big round of applause.
The most important part. Here, I have brochure, or just another case history that someone did on us that kind of says a bunch of the stuff I said, but in better terms. Here, with coupons. 50-cent off coupons. And I got brochures that I didn't take out, so please avail yourself of the coupons and the literature. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it. A couple of things before you go. A couple of announcements. Want to make sure that everybody knows about the follow-up conversations. Dan Monroe and Margaret Anderson from SSU Hutchins Institute are going to be continuing the conversation on December 4th from 6:30 to 8 here at Aquas Cafe. That's what day of the week is that? A Tuesday. Next Tuesday. Also, I want to introduce Rebecca Valentine from the Share Exchange. She's going to say a couple of words about a cooperative workshop that is taking place where Aquas Community is co-sponsoring this up at Share Exchange in Santa Rosa. Rebecca?
Hi, thank you. I wanted to announce that we just got final date set on a co-op workshop that's going to happen on Saturday, January 26th in Santa Rosa from 9 to 4. And the presenter is going to be Andrew McLeod, who is a co-op specialist, and he has written a book on co-ops, and we're excited to have him. And I'm not sure how many of you in this audience, I'm hoping a lot of you know about the Share Exchange, but if you do not, I'm happy to talk to you about that. I'm not going to take up time right now to go into it too much, but we're excited to have him and to continue this conversation about looking at how do we bring in more co-ops into our community and our county. So we're really happy that Aquas is working with us as well, and maybe we'll have bagels from Alvarado. He's in conversation right now, but maybe we can talk him into having helping us with our breakfast for that evening. So I mean that day. It's again Saturday, January 26th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. downtown Santa Rosa, and the price is probably going to be around $60, just so you know. Thank you so much.
And that information is going to be available on Aquas News. Is there anybody here that doesn't get Aquas News? Anyway, you can sign up over here. It's a weekly news article or newsletter that comes out. I think that's it. I'm going to ask Diane Monroe. Oh yeah, so this is part of the monthly dialogue discussion presentation on new economic models. We're going to take December off. Our January one is going to be in cooperation with the Share Exchange in Santa Rosa, and then we're going to continue on in February with Kelly Rajala from the Share Exchange. She's going to be presenting in February, and that's it. Diane Monroe?
You already said what I wanted to say, so we, Margaret and I, just want to invite everyone, if this has like tickled your imagination or your vision or your ideas, to just join us and other people in the community for a free dialogue next Tuesday, 6:30 here at Aquas.
Okay, thank you again for coming. Bye-bye.